Good morning. It's Thursday morning. And on Thursday mornings, we focus on the future. And recently, that's meant that we've explored the three priorities that our church health team has settled on as being priorities for us in the year to come. Those priorities are three. First, to attract young families to First Christian, then to be a light in our community, and to start home groups. And this morning, I want to talk to you about the first of those, about attracting young families to our church. Now, we've encouraged you to pray with us about these three priorities. Pray that God would attract young families to our church. But I want to go a step further this morning and suggest that in addition to praying that God would attract young families, that we would pray for the young families themselves. Now, we don't know who they are, but God does. God is already working in their lives and leading them to find a church home with us, a place where they can grow and serve with their children. And so I encourage you to begin praying for those families. Pray for the pressures that every family faces, financial pressures, pressures of raising children and meeting the demands of work and of life in general, and pray that God would give them strength. Pray that God would grow their faith. Pray for them along the lines of Deuteronomy 6, that they would first themselves be an example to their children, and then talk to them as they wake up, as they go along the way, as they lie down. Pray for the young families. And then, yes, pray that God would lead them to our church. They might find a home. Because we know that that faith begins with God's hand in the life of a family. It was true for Timothy in the verses that I want to share with you this morning, where the Apostle Paul writes to Timothy at the beginning of, I think it's his second letter, and says, I am reminded, Timothy, of the sincere faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois, then in your mother Eunice, and I am sure dwells in you. 3 generations of faith. Much prayer certainly had gone into first Lois praying for Eunice, her daughter, and then Eunice praying for Timothy, along with Lois. And so there was much prayer that must have gone into the faith of young Timothy before he ever started his ministry. And that's what happens, is that faith begins with God's hand in the life of a family. So I want to encourage you to pray for the young families, beginning with our church family. Pray for the young families in our church, that God would grow the parents, God would grow the children in faith, and then pray for the young families associated with older folks in our church, sons and daughters, grandsons, granddaughters, and so on. And then pray that God would complete that process by bringing them to our church to grow and to serve. Now, we have something we're asking you to do. We're asking you to bring shoe boxes to the church. You probably noticed that on this flock note and Tuesday's flock note. And why do we want you to bring shoe boxes? Because you're thinking Christmas. We do the shoebox ministry with Samaritan's Purse at Christmas, Operation Christmas Child. But what we'd like to do, an idea that came out of our church health team, is to prepare a gift box, a gift shoebox for new residents, people who move, families that move into Kittery, so that we might be perhaps the first impression of Kittery that they get, and that we might be the love of Jesus to them and what we put in that box. You'll be hearing more about it, but it begins with a shoebox. So if you could bring shoe boxes in, we're going to have the young people in our Sunday school decorate them, and then we're going to fill them with things that will be of use, be practical use, as well as information about our church, so that we might be the love of Jesus to these families who are in transition and just moved into Kittery. So that's our plan. Our future, God's plans, I should say. So go and have a wonderful Thursday.